Peter Chang here, and welcome to part 2 of our Mi5 build. And in part 2, we're going to be sealing the carbon fiber deck. And we're going to be using 3M's sandpaper here, and this is the kind of a special wet-dry sandpaper. You could find this at any kind of paint shop. Any Sherwin-Williams should have it, or Hirschfield's, and of course your local hobby store should also have it too. So we're going to go ahead and pull out this main chassis plate, and it's just this one right here, and this is going to be the only part that we seal. And we're sealing this because we want to prevent delamination. We're going to be preventing delamination from the sides of this. So we're going to go ahead and sand this wet, and I like to sand it wet because I feel that I get a little bit more control over the sanding process. It seems to create like a more of a refined edge if it's wet. There's nothing wrong with like sanding it dry even, so just so you're aware. It's just personal preference, really. It's what it comes down to. And there's no right or wrong way of necessarily doing this, but whatever way you are using, I would highly suggest just take your time. This chassis looks so brilliant. It's like a piece of art, so I would highly suggest just taking your time so you don't damage the wonderful looking chassis here. So I'm just taking my time, just sanding away, and I'm drying as I go just to check to see how the edge is looking. And I'm just I find that the slower I go, the better it's going to look. So take your time, just make a little short stroke. So remember to be more patient in this step. You don't really want to rush through it. As racers, we generally tend to want to do things in a hurry to get from point A to point B as fast as possible, and this is no exception. So just remember, the slower you go, the quicker you're gonna arrive there. And essentially, it's also a labor of love, really. So take your time, and you're gonna do just fine. So I'm just going ahead and just taking my time, making sure I get this right. And also another thing to kind of help yourself out is just to remember that this is going to be the only carbon fiber piece that we're going to be sealing. So I'm just going ahead and give this a wipe down, and then I'm going to transfer to the other grain of sandpaper. So once this is wiped down, we're going to go ahead and use the finer grain sandpaper, and this is just to give it a better edge. And I've also noticed that some racers tend to skip the step. They tend to go from, or if they are sanding, they might just use one grain of sandpaper, and nothing really wrong with that necessarily. Technically, it's you are sanding, it is correct. However, I'm just kind of a stickler because I just want my edge to be perfect, so I'm going to go ahead and sand it with the finer grain of sandpaper. And once again, I'm just taking my time to get that correct. Once everything is sanded down, you could go ahead and break out the CA glue. CA glue is just cyanoacrylic glue, and pretty much any CA glue would work. Tire glue works. Any modeling CA glue would also work. I happen to like the Zap-A-Gap type CA glue, and I'm going to go ahead and just use my hobby knife, and I'm going to use this hobby knife to seal it. And essentially, I like the hobby knife because I have more control over the flow and viscosity of the CA glue. One thing that you should note is that CA glue smells really terrible, so you should definitely do this in a well-ventilated area. And also remember to take your time with this. At the rate that I'm going, actually, by the time I finish one side of it, the other side is finished drying. CA glue is a relatively fast drying compound, so take your time with it and it should dry in no time. Go slower because you don't want to smear the CA glue all over your main chassis deck. So definitely just take your time with it. And remember, this is a labor of love, and when you're building race cars, you're not necessarily competing with the people just yet. So take your time, make sure you get it just right. And sometimes it's kind of hard to take your own advice too, because you just want to get out there and get racing. So another little tip for you is that as I'm laying down the CA glue, I tend to spill little droplets of CA glue. So you should have a layer of wax paper underneath too. Once the CA glue is dried, I'm going to go ahead and use a black Sharpie to color in the sides. CA glue has a tendency to kind of dry at a kind of a dullish gray color. So I'm going to go ahead and just really darken this in with this Sharpie marker. And just to make the sides really shine and really pop out. If you don't like black, you could always use a different color. Thanks for watching, and remember, everything matters.